Guten Nachmittag.
A nice afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Andrea Bauer. I'd like to welcome you to the third part of Access Academy today. We mainly deal with the issue of managing and communicating change. This is the topic chosen by our promoting organizations. And we invited people to present expert reports. And when I compiled the program, I thought I could do something for large non-profit organizations having a turnover of more than 1 million euros. And so I went back to my roots because my diploma thesis was on one of these associations. And I contacted Robert Franzen and asked him about changes in organizations. And he told me, well, call two people, representatives of Greenpeace and SOS-Childrens Village, because these two associations really underwent major changes. And this is what I did. I called the two. And I'm very happy to welcome Alexander Egit of Greenpeace and Josef Lammer of SOS-Childrens Village. And they'll tell us about their way of dealing with change, what's been accepted and what could not be made acceptable to employees and staff members. Mr. Egit, would you first take the floor, please?
Schönen guten Tag.
Hello to all of you. First, let me thank you for having been invited to this presentation. My topic is going east. That was a major process of change Greenpeace went through. We really turned our organization upside down. I've prepared a presentation, and I think after my presentation we will also have the opportunity to discuss it. So if you have any questions, you of course may ask questions and address them to me. Well, a first overview. What will I present to you? The initial situation first, then the internal reasons for our kind of Eastern enlargement, the regional concept we devised, and the development throughout these 11 years when we turned east, and the outlook. Now, the initial situation. You know, there was the collapse of the Iron Curtain in 1989. The environmental situation in Eastern Europe was really disastrous and did not change for the better in the 1990s. But Eastern European countries were knocking at the door of the European Union. They wanted to join the European Union, and all countries which want to join the European Union have to implement the acquis communautaire, that is to say, the common body of law. And of course, we are talking about 1/3 of Europe. Eastern Europe is 1/3 of Europe. So this is a huge task to help them move from an extremely poor environmental status to a good environmental status. And you have to invest resources to help them do that. We've analyzed the situation and decided, in order to accompany these countries and to link them up with the European Union, it is important to be active and have our own structures present in Eastern Europe. Well, why did we do so? Many people scold the European Union, but the European Union, in terms of environmental protection, is a precursor worldwide. You won't find any international union that is as active as the European Union in terms of environmental protection. And we feared once the Eastern European countries join the European Union, that environmental protection will be, the requirements, the standards will be reduced. So we had to try to bring these countries up to the present standard. But what we even feared most, once these countries are members of the European Union will lose its precursor status in terms of environmental protection. Now Greenpeace is a global organization, and it was so decisive for us because we need a progressive economic union, which is a precursor that can be emulated by other countries. And if the European Union dropped this role, we would have been in dire straits and in a poor situation. So our rationale was quite strong. But who enters the picture? Who helps these Eastern European countries, and which kinds of structures do we need? How do you approach this as an international organization? It is not by chance that many multinationals choose Vienna as a kind of bridgehead for Eastern Europe, and the same happened with Greenpeace. So we tried to penetrate the Eastern European countries from Vienna. We had to make campaigns and raise issues that were not raised by other organizations. For example, genetic engineering at the beginning of 2000, or nuclear energy. People were more in favor of nuclear energy rather than the other way around. So there was really a pent-up demand regarding environmental protection. Finances are also important. In Austria, we have some 8 million inhabitants, and the market for donations is a very tight market. It's not easy to generate donations for Eastern Europe and for environmental protection. And if you want to get more donations and have an open market all of a sudden, a market that is not as tight as in Austria with some 70 million people. And these are countries that are really performers. Look at Slovenia, look at Poland, and also Slovakia or Hungary. The economic development is very interesting, and our fundraising programs there are very successful. So in terms of funding, we also had our second thoughts about these countries. I have to admit that. We have licenses for Hungary, Poland, Croatia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Slovenia, Romania, Bulgaria. I mean, we are not a multinational organization where people have to pay license fees, but it is not possible to launch a Greenpeace in a country. The decision is taken at the Greenpeace headquarters in Amsterdam, and for each region we want to be active in, we need a license, and this is really a thick contract upon which such a license is based. It's not that difficult because there haven't been any Greenpeace organizations there. It would be much more difficult if there had already been any comparable structures. One strategy was to organize local campaigns, have local offices, and the other idea was to have mobile campaigns. For example, block a nuclear power plant or a or a carbon power plant. So these are our mobile structures. We focused on energy production, climate change, atomic, nuclear energy, toxins, environmental toxins, because this is really an issue in Eastern Europe. More an issue there than in the other EU countries. And of course also agriculture and non-industrial agriculture is very prevalent there. And what did we do? First, we formally founded CEE, Greenpeace, for Central and Eastern Europe. And I mean, that's really a major change when you lose your identity, because we included Austria in the CEE countries. And we had to convince our employees, our staff, that this is necessary, because you need the people that go along with you. You have to make this concept of regionalization be understood, so that the ownership is really in the hands of the people there. After that, we integrated the Slovakian office, because this was already in existence. This was followed by offices in Hungary and volunteers and freelancers in Romania. And the first inter-country campaign in 2002, then founding the office in Poland, because I mean, this was more of a challenge than Hungary, because Vienna, Hungary, that's a distance of a few hours, whereas you need a whole day to get to Poland. And we founded offices in Bucharest. And I mean, have you ever spent time in Romania? I can assure you there are easier tasks than launching an office in Romania. Then, of course, the various itinerant campaigns. We had a bus toured the country, also countries where we hadn't yet established any offices, just to make people aware of Greenpeace and the issues Greenpeace addresses. We cooperated with non-profit organizations also in Bulgaria, freelancers in Slovenia and Bulgaria. We hired them. These were individuals from other NGOs that also work for us. We also now try to recruit staff in Croatia, and by 2012, 2013, we will have launched offices and structures in the countries where we have licenses. We also included in our CEE direction, in our CEE concept, we also included a number of countries that have developed from the former Yugoslavia. Regarding the structures we are in right now, we have a managing director for the entire CEE organization. The headquarters are in Vienna. Then we have staff offices, human resources, administration, and finance. Then we have regional organizations, campaigns, fundraising, actions, and the large Austrian office that is fully equipped. And then we've got various regional offices, plus these structures made up of freelancers, which I explained. Some of these offices, like for example those in Slovakia or Romania, there we don't have real offices as such because the return of investment would not be very brilliant. So, but fundraising in Poland, for example, is quite worth the trouble. So fundraising in these smaller countries where people do not yet earn so much money is not really worth the trouble. But in any case, no matter what you do and what kind of structures you install in the various countries, you need to try to redistribute your resources in order to be able to really meet expectations. And this is not very easy for an organization that already had structures. We had our structures in Austria. And if you have to tell people in Austria, we have to move forward in Eastern Europe, but we cannot continue employing you in Austria. So this is really something that is tough. I mean, as long as something is a concept, is theory, that's okay. But when then you are personally involved and you are your employment contract is terminated, then this is entirely different. A principle we really live and use is the principle of subsidiarity. It's a well-known concept of the European Union. And subsidiarity for Greenpeace within our organization is autonomy of the smallest units. We have some kind of common strategy. We have annual planning for every year. So we plan once a year. We adopt this plan, and the next time, I mean, I'm exaggerating now, we see each other again 1 year later, see what did we achieve, do we still have a pent-up demand and have to achieve more. And we learned that you should, as a headquarter, not always interfere, because this is demotivating for the field people. For instance, if you come from Vienna and go to Bucharest and try to explain people in Bucharest how campaigns in Bucharest should be organized, forget it. You might try to tell them these are the general lines along which you should move, but everything else should be left to the people there. And if these people are unable to reach the objectives, the targets, then you have to try to motivate them. And if this doesn't work, or you give them more money, and if all this doesn't work, you have to change the people there. But don't interfere too much. In 2000, we had a budget of 5.5 million euros. Now we have 9.5 million euros for the CE structures. Half of the people are employed in Austria, the remainder in the Central and Eastern European countries. The tendency will reverse. There will be more employees in the CE countries and less than half in Austria. We also have a number of volunteers working for us, activists working in groups, in local groups. This is very important to us. The smaller our office, the more important volunteers are. In Austria, we have fewer volunteers compared with Eastern Europe, because in Austria we have the largest office, and in Austria the degree of professionalism is much higher. I mean, in Eastern Europe, there are environmental problems that are really huge, whereas the really huge problems in Austria are hard to find. CO2, greenhouse emissions, these are issues that are hard to make. This issue is visible. You know, acid rain emissions from coal-fired power plants. In Austria, we hardly have any genetic engineering, so we have already progressed very much. Climate issues are very difficult to communicate to the general public in Austria because they are not that tangible, because Austria has a very high level of environmental protection, whereas in the Eastern European countries, these problems are apparent and you needn't explain much. So this is all I wanted to tell you, and I now give the floor to the other speaker. Thank you, Mr. Egit, for this very frank information. May I now ask Mr. Lammer to tell us more about the SOS-Children's village and what happened there and what major changes they underwent there.
A very good afternoon to you. I would also like to thank you for the invitation to introduce to you the complex organizational structure of the SOS Children villages. I hope this is better now. And I would like to show you the change management after these 60 years of existence for the SOS Children villages, the resistance that was put up, the response, and also the way in which resistance was channeled into positive development. We have around 5,000 children and youth, as well as even their parents, who are located in various institutions. We have 1,100 employees and a budget of more than 80 million euro in Austria. Up to 50% of the budget is actually covered from sponsoring contracts with companies or donations. And it is mainly used for specific care that is not covered by the public sector. Worldwide, we are in charge of about 50,000 children and youth, and we are active in 132 countries of the world. But I will, of course, talk about the development in Austria only, and I will, of course, be glad to answer any questions after my presentation. The Kinderdorf was founded by Hermann Meiner in 1949. That was in Imst in the Tyrol, and the Children's Village was a non-profit organization. In 1954, construction of a second children's village was started in Upper Austria and in other provinces. Plans were made for constructing these villages. Austria was then actually an occupied country divided up into 4 sectors, and it was foreseen that every province, the 9 provinces of Austria, would have an association in its own right, which was then an association, a member association of the main association. And this structure has survived until this day and necessitated some change, which I'm going to describe to you. There is also a lot of dynamic between the volunteers working for the associations in the provinces and the full-time employees in the main association, and also the members in the main association. The SOS Children's Villages is an enormously complex system that is hard to control. Any attempts at changing the structure or in changing workflows result in an attempt of controlling the uncontrollable. Sometimes you don't really know when you intervene in some place what the effect will be in other places and where exactly this effect will set in. However, it would be wrong to complain about the situation, because looking at the development of SOS-Children's villages, the organizational structure also has an enormous creative potential and potential for development, especially for a further development of the educational offers for children, youth and family. However, a loss of friction loss is involved too. So the associations in the provinces were actually founded because one was afraid that Austria would be divided up into different countries. And fundamentally, it was a centralized organization with a centralized budget. Nevertheless, it had those autonomous branches that were supposed to have representative functions. Nevertheless, they mingled with the operational business. Now, taking a leap from the 1960s to the 1990s, the structure actually developed differently. It was in no way like the formal structures that the statutes had foreseen. Due to a change in management and social developments, within a decade, SOS-Children's villages saw an increase of its institutions from 20 to 70. And it was impossible to continue managing such a big organization centrally, and also because of the differences between the formal structure and the actual structures. The competences of and the responsibilities of the branch organizations had to be clarified so that the two structures could actually be reconciled. The branches were supposed to give up some of their competences and some of their powers for the benefit of the central authority, the central association, and certain specialized departments. These provincial associations were very powerful. This required a change in the constitution or the statutes. And Machiavelli was right when he said in the 15th century, reforms cannot expect to be applauded by those who benefit from the status quo. And as a trade-off for the change in the constitution, every branch association or provincial association was given a seat in the main association. And in the ongoing structural reform, this is going to be a tough situation. The whole process of amending and restating the constitution did not encounter any rational resistance, because everybody agreed that it was meaningful to do so. But there was, of course, certain political resistance because influence and power was lost. And as we know, political resistance does not always work with rational arguments, but very often resorts to ideological arguments. Nevertheless, the point that was agreed on was not to discuss positions, but to look for a solution with potential for the future. The board of the main association then introduced a so-called steering body consisting of the chairman of the board and 2 members, and they were supposed to have overruling decision-making powers in all matters. The managing directors of or chairpersons of the 9 provinces were advisors, and the workflows were based on a matrix. Since 2006, we've seen that the many new institutions needed more in funds than we originally had. So we had to use reserves in an increasing extent, especially also because the public sector reduced the funds that it contributed. And by focusing the program meaning the educational offerings and programs, the steering body decided to concentrate on youth welfare and to leave psychotherapeutic outpatient centers and labor market projects for youth who found it hard to find a job were phased out. In spite of the original agreement of the managers of the provincial organizations, the project was bound to fail because of the resistance of the provincial organizations, which did not want to actually waive their healthcare programs and their labor market programs. Moreover, this was also completely against the grain of developments in the history of the SOS-Children's villages, because up to that time there always had been expansion. Since nothing moved, a working group was created this year and given the assignment of optimizing the current structure and coming up with a budget and decision-making structures. And the draft program was then presented, and it included a smaller circle of managers for the provincial branches. So managers would in the future be in charge of 3 provinces instead of 1. So some of the managers would have been or were supposed to lose their offices. Some of them found new jobs within the institution. The new workflows actually involved the provincial managers and the steering body, but it did not include the optimization of the new organizational structure did not include these people. The working group and the steering committee or steering body had agreed that structural optimization cannot be discussed on a broad basis because everybody would only represent their own interests and not an overall view of Austria. After the steering body had taken the decision, the managers of the main association were informed, and so were the chairpersons of the branch organizations. After this, all the employees were informed and were given an opportunity of responding by email, phone, or in person by way of discussions with the managing directors. Right after the program was discussed, there was broad resistance on the part of executives. The provincial managers actually instrumentalized their chairpersons after they had lost their offices, and these then forced the steering body to suspend the implementation of its decision. And it was decided that a process steering committee would be set up to come up with a scheme for implementing the structural reform and also to suggest changes. Now, what do we learn from this? There might be a lot of awareness of the necessity for structural change because operational processes are actually hampered. Any solution-oriented approaches might trigger different responses among employees. And if there is no common idea of how the future structure will look like, it cannot be put into practice or only under enormous pressure. But enormous pressure, as we know, would lead to a reduction of not just motivation and enthusiasm, but also of work performance. When executives lose some of their powers, this may lead to enormous resistance, and they will probably be able to find followers. These stages of escalation are well known from conflict research. However, if we fail to communicate the direction one is heading in before the reform starts, it takes even longer to implement the structural reform. So the goal of expedient structural reform is no longer top of the agenda. The wish to avoid a broad discussion, to be faster on the way to the destination, has actually turned around. And it is by no means faster, even slowed down. But nevertheless, rest assured, the children, youth, and parents feel well taken care of. Thank you very much, Mr. Lammer, for this very clear report from practice. And we'll now ask the two gentlemen up to the podium, and we'll give the floor to members of the audience for questions, if they have any. What about the Friends of Nature? You have seen similar things? No requests for the floor? I took down a few notes about Greenpeace. What about change processes? Are they actually prescribed by Amsterdam, or can you take autonomous decisions for the region? Well, in Greenpeace, the situation is, and I believe this applies to most global or international organizations, they are federations and not so much multinational companies. There is no headquarters which call the tune and everybody has to dance. It's a federation where the individual country associations enter into contracts with each other. So we are an association here in Austria, and the only person who can actually give instructions to me is the managing board. Of course, we actually coordinate activities with our headquarters in Amsterdam. And the final decision whether we get the licenses for Eastern Europe is with Greenpeace International. And the reason why we got the licenses was because we were able to produce a program. Nevertheless, implementation was all ours to design. And if we stick to the concept, it's fine and okay. But if we hadn't done so, I don't think that we would have seen any sanctions. What about the budget? But Amsterdam did not contribute anything to the Austrian budget or budget for the eastward expansion, the eastward enlargement. No, that was from us. We actually built the eastern region with funds, with donations from Austria. But this has investment character. It's about also building strong markets, such as Poland. You can raise funds there, and you can generate nice income there. Basically, doing this is a decision that is really long-lasting. You invest a lot in campaigns, in building an office, in raising funds, and it takes 30 years, so it is a very serious decision that involves a lot of money. About the SOS-Children's villages, you said that there was not enough communication, or you were not courageous enough to talk about the program, and then you had kind of a double avalanche. Was there anybody to follow through that process? Any business consultant, or did you all do this on your own? Yes, we had an external business consultant who followed through the process, but the question when to communicate what. There were so many pros and cons for each possibility, and we did not expect that much resistance. What I liked about what you said was the rounds or the working groups to focus the program. So you'd actually return to Hermann Gmeiner's mission, shedding the add-ons and coming back to the original core business. Well, of course, we started out from family groups that took care of children in the children's village institutions. However, we also work with families a lot. We also offer families an opportunity of residing at an SOS-Children's village. And the children's village employees who take care of children's groups can actually act as role models for parents who have enormous deficits in bringing up children, in keeping a household, in actually managing a household budget. Back to Greenpeace. Did you have any consultant following through? No, we did that on our own. I think it's very interesting to hear from the SOS-Children's villages. I think we do the things we do because we are involved in a lot of campaign work. We draw up a plan, then there's rollout, then there's implementation, and then there's reflection. Reflection is not the strong point. We're a little more actionistic in the way we proceed. And as far as I understand, the children's villages are more centralized. So the difference is huge because we don't have any on-site structures. We always had the biggest problems wherever there were structures on site. They found it hard to accept the necessity of a changeover. One thing that I would like to add and also tell the audience, because we didn't get any questions, I don't know which background you come from, but you must not overlook that the entire nonprofit sector is clearly the biggest growth sector at the moment. So if you are looking for job perspectives, if you're looking for performance, the NGO or NPO segment is absolutely unbeatable. And there is a sad reason for this too, because the government sheds more and more responsibilities and actually outsources these activities. In the United States, this is a mega trend with terrible consequences. And you become dependent on alms instead of being entitled to social support out of government funds. I just wanted to add that because things that you deal with and I deal with are difficult, at least at first sight, but it's the future. Now, looking at egalitarian systems, what is development, what is change management like there? If you are good at that, you can get a job from me immediately. Let me just add one thing. The government or governments withdrawing their funding cause major problems in the field of education. And I would now take education to mean more than just intellectual education, but also social and emotional education. Sustainability is a buzzword that people like to use, but we really have to be afraid of the possibly sustainable impact of what we're failing to do today and what this might bring in 10 or 15 years' time. Because we certainly have to educate the children emotionally and socially. And based on that, we can give them intellectual education, counting euros in schools, in job projects, in kindergartens. This may bring a lot of problems for the future. I think this is a nice closing statement. I've been fascinated by nonprofit organizations for 25 years, and they will never stop fascinating me. So we can see American circumstances striking roots here. Many nonprofits trends come from the United States because they are managed very professionally. And I think it might be nice to find a midway solution, European style. Are there any questions from the audience? Yes, we have a question. Just because you mentioned, sorry, just because Access 2011 is the place where these two systems are discussed. My question is, did professional consultants or incentive providers play any role in this, in a very modern type of management structure as in Greenpeace, or in a grown structure that emerged out of a situation of need? Would offerings from this event have any place in your systems? Well, I would say that we engage with these issues to a great extent presently because Greenpeace is using the mass media a great deal at present. We are very much focused on politics and corporations, and of course we try to reach our goals by way of campaigns. So funds are the big issue. And I think it would make sense to look at what is happening in access and to reorient our procedures. In a country like Austria, we're actually touching our limits, getting to our limits when it comes to the typical actionism type of campaign that we pursue. And we should look at different ways of communicating and reaching out to the people. In most of the Eastern European countries, the good old Greenpeace game has to be played for another 5 years. But I think in Austria, a few different strategies could be used in communication, and maybe also communicate more directly. In Austria, you have many, many people who are convinced that environmental protection is a good thing. So you don't have to convince anybody. So it's a matter of a dialogue, of joining forces instead of trying to convincing people to protect the whales or to be against genetic engineering or nuclear power. You don't have to explain that to Austrians. But in Austria, you could, of course, come up with suggestions for improvements in dialogues. Austria is privileged because of the high percentage of renewable energies. So Austria could serve as a showcase. And that's another issue. How do you showcase something? I could imagine several ways of cooperating with the likes of you, and I look forward to looking at the fair. Well, if you have the feeling that this does not really fit the context, in fact, the meeting industry is at present organizing green meetings, and we have Ms. Bauer-Zwins with us. She is one of the initiators of the Green Meetings movement. We're trying to introduce that voluntarily. We're trying to get ever more congress centers, hotels, etc., to get certified as a green meeting provider. And so how does NPO thinking fit in? We have actually two target groups in Access. On the one hand, it's the corporate decision makers who book meetings and incentives, and then we have 106,000 associations in Austria. And we have not been able to bring all those in who are responsible for associations. But I would go so far as to take the decision makers of associations here and tell them what Austria has to offer. And for next year, I would really hope for a full auditorium to discuss how we're doing as non-profit organizations, like smaller medical groups that I work with, or large associations. We have a non-profit organization congress, which is highly theoretical and scientific in June, but we don't have a platform where we discuss things like how do you handle your management board or engage with your management board. So I believe we've today taken a first step. And now if our organizing associations Access might become a platform for the many nonprofit organizations which we have. It could be anything from child protection, and I can see Ms. Bauer-Zwins really being happy about Mr. Egit's presence. Can I just add one thing? The enormous membership, be they sponsoring members, be they volunteers. The entire nonprofit sector in Austria has an enormous outreach. It's an enormous potential of multipliers there. I haven't really calculated it, but I think we are looking at 1.5 million people who, one way or the other, are committed to a cause by donating money or by working as volunteers. And it's very easy to reach them. They all get their membership magazines and online newsletters. And what you said about the certification is very, very important, because it all starts with yourself. And once you start moving, you find it easier to take the next step. And it always has to be a political step. I think it's very important. You'd have to do something about yourself first and then actually try to work politically in that you pass it on to the rest of society. I'm not a great fan of CSR concepts that actually serve the purpose of embellishing companies' activities. It would be much nicer to have more interfaces with the people. And I would rather see donations for SOS-Children's villages and Greenpeace instead of CSR reports on glossy paper. I think that's the vision for the future. And as I said, I would like to have triple that audience and a discussion on the non-profit sector. Another thing I learned today is that companies don't share. They don't share their changes because it's an official secret. So this confirms to me that non-profit organizations have the courage to talk about what they're doing, and they share information. That's precisely what I know. And I was quite astonished not to find the same spirit in business corporations. So I was happy that this has now happened, and I would like to see the Access Academy become a cluster for non-profit organizations that report with how they deal with the situation. Less funds from the state, creative ideas, and what can we share and learn. That's one of the things that I really like. If there are no further questions from the audience, we have a question from the audience.
My question is addressed to Mr. Egit. When he talked about his concept of going into the CEE countries, what was your planning horizon? You presented a development across 10 years. Did you always think about 10 years, or was this a slower process? Well, we knew from the very beginning that this would be a sustainable investment for an indefinite period of time, because if we have a time frame of 10 years, we wouldn't have been able to do it. So the initial situation was no time frame at all, but we had milestones. How should it look like after 5 years, after 10 years? But you know, these milestones amuse me rather than elate me. I mean, the milestones just showed us that what we did not achieve rather than what we achieved. So you needn't think it too small in a scale, yeah? It's because otherwise you won't achieve anything. You have to be really entrepreneurial, and entrepreneurial spirit needs to be prevalent within a not-for-profit organization. If you're not ready to think that way, you should simply leave it. You know, change, as we've heard, has something to do with courage and clarity, as Mrs. Schweighofer told us in the previous presentation. And we, as Access, we always support an organization. This year it's SOS-Childrens Village. We will remit a donation in favor of an SOS-Childrens Village in Altmünster. And when people eat and drink here, please also make donations, because we invite you to this lunch and dinner, so please make donations. Just let me explain what this project in Altmünster is about. Families are invited to join us at an SOS-Childrens Village, and we cater to the needs of the children and the adults, the parents, the family, the whole family. And we now prepare another apartment for taking up another family that can live with us, and we don't have any funds earmarked in our budgets and budget neither at SOS-Children's Village nor government funds. I think this is really so. A small tile in the bathroom of this apartment will be paid by Access and the donations of Access. We also make presents, and after that, please give us your feedback. In these pouches, pockets in front of you, you have a small gadget with which you can vote. So first on Mr. Egit, was the subject interesting for you? 1, not interesting. 2, interesting. 3, very interesting.
Frage 2.
Second question. Were you able to learn something for daily praxis? 1, nothing. 2, something. 3, very much. Third question. The quality of the speaker? Not good, good, excellent. We won't publish the results. The speakers will get their evaluation later. And the same questions now for Mr. Lammer. Was the subject interesting for you? 1, not interesting. 2, interesting. 3, very interesting. Second question. Were you able to learn something for your daily practice? 1, nothing. 2, something. 3, very much. Question 3. The quality of the speaker? 1, 2, and 3.
Dann bedanke ich mich bei den beiden.
I would like to thank the two gentlemen for their presentations, and I also thank you, the audience, for having come. We'll continue tomorrow at 2 p.m. The 4th module, it deals with incentives, and at 3:30 we'll get practice reports from smaller associations. Austrian managers were involved in the process of change that took place in these associations. I thank you for having spent your time with us, and whoever has badges may also join us at the Access 9 at the Academy of Sciences in Wolzeile this evening. Thank you.